Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Eaton here with life coach Steve Rowell and DarkDryDrew. Today is Thursday, January the 31st, 2019. It's 4 p.m. in New York. That makes it 1 p.m. in Los Angeles, 9 p.m. in London, and Sydney, Australia is at 8 a.m. So wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for an episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And we are welcoming Steve to join us here on the Thursday afternoon podcast on a regular basis now. Of course, he and I did the show last week, but now part of it, driving to his destination. So hopefully he'll be out of the car pretty quick. But now we're three. Steve, two has become three. That's an improvement. It's like a 50% growth, you know?
It is, yeah. That's 50% growth is certainly way up there. You don't get that in the economy.
Absolutely. You get that kind of growth in the business, you know you're winning, right? So how you been? You had a good week? I mean, I hope life has been treating you well.
It has, and there've been some tech challenges as well. I had one of the most important meetings of my life so far on Saturday.
Wow.
So yeah, that was it went according to my intentions, and that's awesome. I can't say too much about that because that's going to be in the national press.
Oh wow. Okay.
Over the coming weeks, but I was speaking to. It's about my story. I think I mentioned it before. I'm going to be a trustee on a charity called the Survivors Trust, which helps survivors of rape, childhood abuse, those other different areas of that. And I had a meeting with the chief advisor to, I'll tell you this bit, but I won't go any further, the chief advisor to the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Wow.
Who's the head of the Church of England.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be helping change the way things move in that avenue, and working with the Church of England and with the Survivors Trust to move that in a direction that's going to be positive for other survivors. That's the idea. That's all I can say so far, because we do need to iron out how that's going to work.
That's exciting, though. I mean, we're talking big time here. Archbishop of Canterbury. Oh my goodness.
So yeah,
that's fabulous.
It's awesome. It's awesome stuff. It's something I've been working on for quite a number of years. Trying to get to a point where I was strong enough to do that. To get to this point, but now I've got there. It feels awesome, but also extremely scary at the same time, because I've never pushed myself this far before. And
that's quite a push. Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna throw up some challenges. I know that, but I'm sure they'll all be worthwhile.
I can't wait until you're able to make the full announcement, because I want to hear the whole story about how this even came together in the first place. It's got to be a good law of attraction story in there, so I'm looking forward to that one.
There is. It's all been manifested, and the intentions and outcomes that have happened have been set by myself amongst other people as well, and there've been other people involved in that journey. But yeah, it's definitely been the law of attraction, law of vibration, whatever you want to call it, and and my purpose is coming to fruition, and I'm getting to actually live and help people. It's always been my dream to help other survivors get what they deserve and get out of life, you know, they want and can have.
Yeah.
Because I've done that, so I want to show other people that it's possible, and I've got an avenue to do it now, and that's awesome. That is awesome.
Truly awesome. So that's amazing stuff.
Wow. Let's get on to Drew. Is Drew ready? Is he back in? Drew?
So it turns out my mom locked the screen lock that doesn't have a key, so I have to go hop my fence real quick and get through the back of the
Okay.
So maybe another 5 minutes. I'll be right back.
All right, Drew. I'm going to mute you while you're doing that so that we don't hear the background noise, and I'll bring you back in a moment. So.
I know how to do it, so I'll hop back in.
Okay, very good. So, yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
That's the one thing I've learned about this program. You can never know what to expect. It's just this is like business as usual around here. So, wow, though, that's really, I mean, that's a great lift just even hearing about that. I mean, knowing
Yeah.
that, well, first of all, it's big because you have this, I mean, the world has heard of the Archbishop of Canterbury. We don't have to know anything about the Church of England and know that, that's the equivalent of the Pope for England. I mean, this is pretty big stuff, you know? So just to have that in the same sentence with you is exciting. And then
It
to know
is.
that it's tied into something that is truly, really close to your heart because I mean, it's painful, but it's also something that you've grown through in a big way and come out of the other end smiling. You can see the smile on your face right now. So, I mean, whoa, what a heartwarming story it's going to be. I mean, I can hardly wait to hear the whole thing. It's going to be fabulous.
Yeah. I think it'll be part of the story will probably be a little bit distressing for people, and then
Right.
it's gonna morph into the positive. But I think you've got to tell both sides to get the
Absolutely.
message across in the right
Yeah.
way.
And actually, it's kind of in line with the way many stories go today anyway, except that this has a really positive ending. I mean, most of them are
Yeah.
like, okay, here's a terrible thing, and then it gets worse. This is the exact opposite, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the
Yeah.
way they usually are?
Well, I think Hollywood movies used to be something bad happens, then there's always a hero, and it's all sorted out at the end, which is fantastic. But
Right, right.
recently I've noticed they've started changing where it'll be a bad horror film, and it stays bad and ends worse. And I'm like,
Yes.
that's not supposed to happen. What's happened to Hollywood?
But I like happy endings.
I do.
Oh well. Yeah, no, you're right. That's exactly what's been happening. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons I don't watch most Hollywood movies anymore. I've lost interest in them. Do you know which movies I watch most often? I watch
Well,
British movies most often,
yeah,
believe it or
yeah,
not. That I mean, because that's where the good ones are these days.
yeah. Okay.
So, you know.
Thank you. That's a nice compliment. Not that I
Anyway,
get involved in film, but you never know.
that's so this is also a Q and A in addition to bringing Steve on and introducing him to Drew once Drew hops the fence. uh, so if you have any questions that you want us to address, feel free, if you're listening to the live stream, that is, feel free to plop them into the comments section and we will pick them up and talk about them and kick them around a little bit. And I see a lot of people saying hello and exchanging greetings and all that kind of thing. So that's really fabulous. But I don't really see anything as a question yet. Like Nasha was sorting out an audio problem, but yeah, I don't really see any questions in there. So one thing that we've been doing lately, Steve, is when we aren't seeing any questions from the live stream audience, we just kind of come up with our own and see if we can kind of stump each other. So let's play Stump the Expert. How about that? While we're waiting for Drew to hook in. Um, so let's see. Well, okay. Here's kind of a broad one, and this applies, I think just about everybody's life on fairly much of a daily basis. When we're trying to track stuff and also just trying to live our lives and go through all the stuff that we go through, and we run into unexpected disappointment. And that unexpected disappointment is about something close to our hearts. Maybe it's something related to our careers, or maybe there's a family situation going on that has turned into a big fight or something, or maybe there's something with our health that kind of just hit us out of the blue. All of a sudden, we've got this diagnosis we're dealing with. When we run into stuff like that, you have to have some way to deal with it. Otherwise, you just get that negative spiral going. So let's talk about some strategies. How do we change that? How do we turn that around when we're faced with something that we're hit we're blindsided out of the blue with this stuff that hit us? Is like, whoa, where did that come from? What do you do?
I think the main thing with that is because things like that do happen all of the time to me, and I think the main thing that you've got to do, well, for me anyway, is accept that it's there, but also accept that you've been in the driving seat of your life, so you have inevitably made a choice that's created that outcome.
This is true.
So it may well feel like you've been blindsided, but if you actually track back where that came from, and it will always go back to a fork in the road where you've taken a certain or made a certain choice that's caused that outcome to happen. So whether it's, I don't know, um, health or something like that, there's probably something that you've done in the past that's then created that outcome for
Oh,
you,
sure,
that illness or whatever.
yeah, right.
But once you've accepted that, then you're back in the present moment. You can now move forward from it and say, right, okay, it's happened. I've accepted it's happened. I've accepted that it's probably something I've done that's led it to be there in the first place. So I can either allow it to ruin the rest of my day, week, month, year, or I can take stock of it, accept that it's happened, and take choose which direction to go in now that's in my best interest rather than not.
Acceptance is a big part, isn't it? It's not necessarily acceptance that something bad happened to you, that you deserve to have something bad. It's acceptance simply that it happened and that it's up to you to decide what your perspective is and how you're going to handle it.
Yeah, exactly. So you can handle it in a way of being allowing it to stop you in your tracks, stop you moving forward, cause you loads of pain and anguish and issues and
Hmm.
anxiety, or you can say, right, okay, it's happened. There's nothing I can actually do about it now because it's in the past. So let's move off in a direction that's not going to be as painful.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, that's good. And that actually has kind of fueled the first question from our live stream audience. So let's bring that one in. Sarah says, "What's your 5 top tips that you do every day to keep the law of attraction on your side in what you want? And how do you speed it up? And is this a possibility?"
Yes, it is. Um, I tend to live this stuff. I still make mistakes. Everybody is always learning. I made a mistake earlier today, in fact, not unintentionally, but I upset somebody that I've got. Well, I don't know if I upset them, but I did something today which was probably the wrong decision to do. I'm not going to say what it was, but I made a decision to do something that was totally innocent from my perspective, um, and it's somebody that I really respect, and I love the stuff that they do. Um, but they took it in a way that was not how I meant it.
Mm,
But that
yeah.
again, that was my responsibility because I should have asked them first before I did what I did to get their opinion on it. So I made a mistake by not doing that first.
Mm,
So again, me that was in the driving seat, and I fully accept responsibility for that. There's nothing I can do about it now. It's done. I've apologised, but there's nothing else I can do to change the situation apart from now decide to let that go and move forward with it. So that's a good example of taking stock of something that you've done and accepting that you made the mistake. It wasn't
mhm,
anybody else's fault. That's
right.
the main bit. So it's about accepting. The first part is accepting that you're in the driver's seat. Whether you've got your eyes closed driving and you're driving on subconscious patterns, or you're in the driver's seat with your eyes open and you move and you're making active choices to send you in the direction that you want to go. Now that's the choice you've got to make. Secondly, what was it to speed things up?
To speed things up, in fact, she added to it, she said, "I struggle to keep my mind clear and focus on one clear thing. I mean, I feel like I'm a kid in a candy shop and I want it all. So is it possible that I'm getting in the way of the process? I feel I understand and I'm learning about the law of attraction, but I feel like I'm not activating it."
Okay, so in terms, I'll tell you my daily routine, which is a little bit odd, but it works for me.
Hello?
I think we could all say
So
that.
yeah,
Can you
well,
hear me now?
Yep, we hear you.
yeah, fantastic. Did you get over the fence okay?
Yeah, and then the button to like open the garage didn't work, so I'm just stuck in my backyard. I
Oh,
had to
okay.
drive the car up on the side of the yard so I could hop over the fence, because if not, I totally would have broken the fence. And then I used this like butterfly on a piece of metal. I bent the metal to like reach over the fence to open the lock, and then I get over feeling like James Bond, and then like the button just doesn't work. So I'm just sitting in the backyard.
Well, we're
So
glad that you found a place to sit. That's the main thing.
Yep.
So what has this experience taught you, Drew?
To succumb to reality and to just accept things as they are. Definitely.
Or make sure you take a spare key. Oh no, it was a lock that doesn't open with a key, wasn't it?
It was fun for what it was worth, to be thrown off and have to handle it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's fantastic. It's cheered me up.
Yeah.
That was good. But yeah, what were we? I've lost where I was now.
Sarah was asking about how do you speed things up with the law of attraction and how she feels like she understands the law of attraction, but she doesn't feel like she's activating it.
Yeah. So with me, I'll tend to run with this stuff on a daily basis. So my subconscious still throws negative thoughts at me all the time. I think we shared an exercise, didn't we, on one of the previous podcasts, which is letting go of negative emotions and negative thoughts. So when a negative thought comes up in your mind, I'll do this all the time when I'm driving. The one I use, which is I said it's a bit weird. For me, some people might find it weird. I don't. People probably see me driving in cars going the other way and think I'm a bit weird because they won't know why I'm doing it. But I do, so that's fine. But what I'll do is, whilst I'm driving, if I get a negative thought that then creates a negative feeling, because it's the feeling that carries the energy that goes out into the universe to then change the matter and reorganize your reality, as it were.
Right.
So what I'll do, if I get a negative thought, I can't think of one right now, which is good. I'll be sat there and I'll go like this. I don't know, people can't see me, so I'll have to, if they're just listening, they won't be able to see. But what I'll do is I'll shake my hand in front of my face and just go like that. And that's me. But in my mind, I'll be saying, stop it, or new, a lot of people say new timeline or whatever works for you. So you're actually stopping your thought. You're making your subconscious aware that there's a cat behind you.
Yes. That's
You're making your subconscious every time. Do you know that's because you're expecting that to happen, Walt?
Why is that?
Every podcast we do, is it a she? She turns up, doesn't she?
This is a he. There are two of them. One's a she and one's a he.
Oh,
this is a he.
Okay. This is a he. But a cat always turns up, so you're expecting that to happen. You must be.
They're expecting to be here. I think it's more like they're doing the manifesting, to be perfectly honest. But
That's awesome. But yeah, so setting the new timeline or whatever you want to call it, but that action that I make, it can be anything you want. You can squeeze the steering wheel, you can flick your ear, whatever works for you. It just takes you back into the present moment rather than allowing the thought in your head to take you off down a road on a story that's negative or doesn't serve you in the right way. And that works really well for me. So I can get myself back into the thoughts that I want to be thinking to manifest the outcomes that I want. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah. So that's one of the techniques that I use. Another one to get grounded is, well, I'll do this throughout the day. So for example, when I have my meeting, you can imagine I was really nervous. I had all sorts of thoughts whizzing around in my head about what could happen, what might happen, what will happen. So I had to do this probably every 30 seconds to every minute. I had to bring myself back into the present moment because my mind was off in order to keep me focused on the outcomes that I wanted to get out of the meeting and the words, make sure that the words that came out of my mouth were in alignment with those outcomes that I wanted.
Right.
So, and I'm doing that all of the time. So in that meeting, I had my hands like this. You'll see me doing this a lot when we're on the podcast when I'm thinking. So I'll bring myself back into the present moment by clapping my hands together. So it's just simple things that can
just
trigger
little motions. Yeah.
Little motions that will trigger you to be back in the present moment because that's when you can control your thoughts, which then obviously control your feelings and then send the energy out to the universe. So that's my main one. I'll do that all of the time, all day. Sometimes I do forget to do it, and the stories will start in my head, and the negative thoughts will go off, and I'll go off on a tangent, which happened today. And I let myself sit in that. I let myself sit in it for about 3 or 4 hours, and then I was like, "Steve, what are you doing?" Yeah, and
exactly.
then I'm back.
That's what happens.
Yeah, yeah. But it's about practice. It's all about practice. The more you practice it, the easier it gets.
Mm, yeah. Well, that's something that Drew and I have talked about a lot, and he's been applying the practice too, because Drew's a uh, very careful and deliberate thinker, and approaches everything in a
That's good.
very deliberate manner. Um, and he's been well. I mean, Drew, I should let you tell your own story because, well, first of all, is there anything new since last week? Because last week you were giving us, all these tales about all these things that are working out wonderfully, and you're experiencing all this great growth and so forth. So, is there anything new? And second of all, why don't you tell Steve in your own words? What's your process?
Uh, I think you definitely. I'm not very good at talking about myself in that way because I never like to come across as potentially bragging, you know. But
No,
yeah, I guess
brag away.
deliberate would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says, brag away, just go for it.
Yeah. I'm very deliberate. I think, and that's I think everything through. It's pretty common for my personality type to do that, but it's one of those
Yeah.
things where other people don't always realize that, and so like every decision I make is very calculated, which is a good thing and a bad thing because it sort of exhausts an inordinate amount of energy throughout the day. But then like most of the things I set my mind to, I do accomplish. It's just that there's so many ideas that come into my mind that it's like every day feels like an entire week or like an entire lifetime. And that's sort of how I've been trying to approach it lately. So with that, the major revelation that I figured out, and I would read you guys the whole thing, but it's inside the house that I'm locked out of. But I wrote down sort of like I wanted to reassess like what I should base my self-worth on. So I know for a lot of, I guess I'd consider myself an artist essentially. But a lot of artists kind of base their self-worth on their work and their success. And I was finding that to be a pretty miserable time. And so what I rearranged it to is not so much the success or creating pieces, but sort of like the dedication to self-growth, the dedication to always trying to create regardless of what comes out. And so having it be basing my self-worth on the process rather than the outcomes or the byproducts of the process. So focusing
That's
on
clever.
what I can actually do,
That's very clever. That's awesome because you've just reframed your whole subconscious thought around your self-worth. That's brilliant. That is. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done for doing that. That is awesome because
Thank you.
you've actually you've. This is why sometimes it's good to be able to sit down and analyze yourself and look at what you're doing, and then you've quite clearly worked out where you were putting your self-worth and how you felt about yourself onto your result, onto not your results, sorry, onto what you were producing, rather than the effort that you were putting in. And you've now switched that to the effort that you're putting in. So your self-worth, I hope, has now gone up, has it? And you feel better?
Definitely. I actually, because I've had Walt and I've talked about this. I've had this screenplay that I've been kind of working on and off for 2 years, and it's become so intimidating because it's so enormous in my head. And so just in that night, right after making that revelation, I just started writing because I was like, okay, it's my dedication to just trying to create and just doing whatever, regardless of what comes out. And I wrote like an entire scene and then went to bed. So it had pretty immediate effects. It took a long time to get there, though, to kind of realize. I was describing it to someone recently because one of my friends was like, how have you been, doing these things and restructuring your mind? Because I spent the last 7 months mostly alone after college, and I'll actually be working soon. But in college, I'd have like an existential crisis maybe once a month where I'd realize some big thing, and that was mostly because I was so preoccupied the rest of the time with internships work and school, so that, once a month I'd be like, oh my gosh, but, have some big thing that I realized. But then having so much alone time, it got to the point where I was having an existential crisis every week and then every day. And then there were even days where I'd have like 3 huge revelations in one day. And having gone through this for like 7 months now, it's at the point where if you're like, they're like dragons, all of these existential crises. And if you were like, oh, do you remember that one dragon you slayed that, was a blue dragon and it had this and that? And it's at the point now where like I've gone through so many of these different thoughts that I've gotten sort of lost in it. And so I'm sort of trying to write them down more. And that's been helping a lot lately.
Yeah, I think journaling is definitely something I recommend, because then you can, if the same thing comes up again, you can always reference back and you know what you've dealt with before, so then it becomes less powerful next time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
So that works fantastically.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to get better at, because I realized like by the end of this that I'd traversed all this distance and that it had been so enormous compared to like I feel like I've learned more in 7 months than I did in 4 years of college. But the 4 years was sort of all the context and experience I needed to make sense of my situation, I guess, and sort of have like, because I finally got to the point where I, like, the reality that I exist in now is distinctly different than the reality that I lived in when I was younger, from my own perception of the world, and then also like literally all of the external things are so much different. The culture is so much different. Like just where I live is so much different. All of that's kind of changed. So sort of being able to look back at all of that and then connect my, I mean, one of the big things was like just going through my room and seeing all of these different projects I had plans for, and being like, oh, and realistically what happened? I did not do all of them. So what does that mean? Does that mean that I failed, or did I just have way too many ideas that I want to do? And so that was, kind of asking questions like that.
Well, that's it. But if you just mentioned there the amount of things that you've been through and dealt with, but you didn't actually realize how huge that was. So you've actually moved from, you've moved so far and progressed so much, but because you weren't aware that you were doing that, then you weren't able to celebrate it. Because a key with this stuff as well is really celebrating every time you have a breakthrough, because your subconscious mind works. Everything your subconscious mind does is for a reason. It's all because of learnt patterns from the past. So your oh, he's back. your So your subconscious is basically doing its job, keeping you where you've always been, or at least it tries to, because that's where it feels safe. So when you're making these massive changes, and then by the time you've done these things, because you've just been running and running and running and going so quickly to a different place, this is why everybody tends to have then like a crisis where they'll go back to where they were, or feel like they've gone back to where they were, and they've created all this fantastic stuff, but then all of a sudden it just goes bang and they're back to where they used to be, because along the way they didn't celebrate success. So that's a big thing for me. That just highlighted that to me. That make sure that every time you do have a big breakthrough, you celebrate it massively. I mean, I don't know how you celebrate, but just dance around or tell yourself how well you've done. Your subconscious listens to that stuff and it'll be like, oh, I feel good now, so we'll have more of that. We'll do more of this. We'll keep going. So that's what I picked up from what you said there.
I like that a lot. That's something I definitely have like totally not really done. We sort of, when my friend and I finished our short film, we did like a screening for our friends and our parents. But otherwise, like most of my achievements, I've just been kind of like, all right, on to the next one. Like, no need to wait around. But I definitely have been working on the self-validation. But yeah, I like that. I guess it's kind of new to me.
Yeah, it's new to quite a lot. I mean, I didn't used to do it. I didn't used to celebrate enough. And it does. Once you start doing it, you'll see the changes that just speed up. They just It's just bam, bam, bam. Because every time, even if it's what you would think is a significant, insignificant achievement, still celebrate it. Because every time you celebrate something, you create chemicals in your brain that your subconscious likes. If you're not celebrating something that you want to continue or you want to do more of, the subconscious doesn't realize that that's a good thing, so it won't actively go and seek more of it. So every time you celebrate, you're creating those nice chemicals in your brain. Your subconscious eventually will start going, hang on a minute, I want more of that. I want more of that. So it'll start making choices. You won't have to make conscious choices towards your goals anymore. Your subconscious will do it automatically, and then you're just on autopilot because it likes that feeling, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. I'm gonna have to start applying that.
It's
It's
interesting that
awesome.
we're talking about this because this is tying in. I was wondering if it was going to come around. It almost always does, and it did in this case. How what we talk about here ties into what's being discussed in the audience who are listening to the live stream as we're recording this. And at first, I wasn't sure how it was going to come around, but it really did because Jeffrey asked a couple questions, and those questions were about activating experiences, activating law of attraction, all that kind of thing. And what you were just describing between the two of you was this endless series of activations and how you're dealing with them and so forth. But I'll ask the questions anyway because what followed was a comment from Sarah about the conscious and subconscious mind, and that's what you guys were just talking about. So let's bring them in. First, Jeffrey's questions were the interesting question: do we activate gravity? Very interesting question. And then the second question: how do we define work and success? Which is kind of what you guys were dealing with there. So, Steve, what's your answer on those? How do you define work and success, and do we activate gravity? Is that part of being a deliberate creator?
Well, gravity, I think, is in essence a universal law in itself. So I don't know. If you believe that you activate gravity, then I suppose you do, yes. Um, if you don't, then but it's there. We expect this is the thing with the law of attraction and the outside experience that we then interpret in our ultimately powerful minds and brains, is the fact that anything we expect to happen tends to happen or does happen. So, for example, I get up on a morning, I expect the sun to rise, so it does. You know, you could go down all sorts of different routes with that
Oh
question.
yeah, rabbit holes get
But
fun.
what you could, yeah. So it's I suppose it's what you want to believe. I don't know what I believe in terms of gravity. I think it's a universal law, like the law of attraction, because it's something that's always there. You can't turn it off, can you?
I actually think that the law of gravity is a subset of the law of attraction, to be perfectly honest. Because the law of gravity is really about attraction between two objects,
Yeah, of
usually
course it is. Absolutely.
planetary signs. Yeah, well, it's
Yeah,
attracts.
never
You
thought.
know,
Yeah, never thought of it like that. That's
it
a good
really
analogy.
is.
I like that. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So what was the second part of the question?
The other one was about how do you define work and success, and especially defining success. That's exactly what you were talking about. You were not only talking about defining success, but celebrating success. So let's go back. What are we talking about when we say success?
I suppose that's individual. That's going to be
Yeah.
different for every single person. In you know, in I was going to say in the UK, but this is worldwide, isn't it?
It totally is.
Yeah. But yeah, for every single person, their definition of success is going to be different. I define my success as helping other people to be empowered and move forward with their lives. The more people that I help do that, the more successful I feel. Um, some people think the amount of money you've got success. Some people think having a certain career they're successful. I don't know. It's relative to who you are and what you desire as an individual.
Mm, yeah, that's a good point.
But
Did you want to weigh in on that, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important question would be like to check if what you think is success actually is making you happy. That's kind of what I did. I'm like, like when I do like finishing a screenplay is like that's a one day out of the year. But writing the screenplay, that was like 30 days, and planning the screenplay was like the entire year. So I was like, well, how the heck am I going to make it so this whole thing's enjoyable? That I'm not feeling like I'm converging to a point, but that I'm always succeeding at what I'm aiming for. And so that's where I realigned it. So it was like, okay, as long as I'm putting in the effort, I'm not like half-assing it and just, I'll just write a few things. But like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write, and whatever comes out, comes out. But that dedication to writing and the dedication to personal growth and all these other things, kind of just like realigning all of, well, the first part though is finding out what actually makes you happy. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of people would kind of agree on it once you get there, that like money doesn't make things that much better beyond a certain point. Like once you have, I like books from thrift stores. I buy my clothes from thrift stores. All the shows I go to are like $10. I basically just need a small amount of money to survive. So like for me, money is not that important. But some people think it is. But then if you ask like, well, are you actually happy? Most of the rich people I know seem quite miserable, not just in their own lives, but towards other people. So, I mean, there's lots to, I'd say I would not recommend defining, success. Like if you're like, what should I base my self-worth on or success on? I'd say, well, find what makes you happy. And like really not what society tells you, because the things that make you happy might be things that society scorns. Now, if that's a criminal thing, then like, okay, maybe let's not do that. But if it's just something that's weird or different or against the grain, then, go for it. I mean, that's what a lot of my art is. Like I've been hated on for quite a while, but it fulfills me.
That's good. That's fantastic. But also, what you touched on there as well is you mentioned the reframing again. You've reframed the effort that you're putting in, and then you're defining that. In effect, you're defining that as your success. So, for anybody that's working towards something that makes them happy, and you hit the nail on the head there, Drew. It's got to be something that makes you happy. If you're doing something that you find boring, laborious, and really drains your energy, then how can you ever see yourself as successful? But if you're doing something that's you absolutely love and enjoy and put the effort into, now every little step that you take towards a goal. So, like you said there, you spend, I don't know, a year. What was it? A year writing the screenplay, or no, 30 days
a year
writing
planning, a month writing, wrap it up in one day.
Yeah. So all those processes, so you've got a year planning, but that planning section will be split down into different parts, I'm assuming, over that period.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So every time you get through one of those, I don't know how, because I don't know anything about screenplays, but every time you get through one of those areas of that year, so you've done the first month or whatever, and you've got part of the planning done, you should celebrate that. And then another piece, you should celebrate that and celebrate. I mean, you can even celebrate daily. So if you've sat down and one day you've written a load of content and you're really happy with it, celebrate it. Even if it's been an hour and it's fantastic, celebrate that. And the more you celebrate the things that you want to do and you enjoy doing, then the more the subconscious mind wants to do more of it, and you find it easier then to be motivated towards doing it. So yeah, it's brilliant. Celebrating is a massive thing.
Yeah, I need to do that, and I'd add that like even if the work, make sure to differentiate like putting in effort versus because if the final product sucks, like it's still don't get upset about that, because that can always be changed. It's the effort that's put in that really matters. Is kind of what I'm beginning to realize, because like with art pieces especially, you can always have a vision in your head, but like it is never going to be exactly what you thought it would be. And that could be frustrating for someone like me, where I have like the exact full thing in my head, and then when I try and get it onto paper, it's like, how the heck do I do this? but just the dedication to doing it, and then being like, okay, I did that. Like I put words on paper. That was success. Like every moment, not even like a day or the month necessarily. Every moment spent doing that is a success, because I'm doing something I enjoy that has meaning.
That's good. It's fantastic. It's brilliant that you've changed all that around and you're moving in a direction now that's. You even sound happy. You sound focused and what's the word? And content with what you've done and the direction that you're going in.
Definitely, yeah. And it's weird because that change was like, it took me 5-10 minutes to kind of just write down, like, I guess you could even call it like a guide to life. It was just like 5 sentences of like how I should reframe my brain. But that was all it took. That it just made sense. But this kind of thing where, like, even though that revelation took 5 seconds, of just like, oh my gosh, I realized something. Let me write it down. But like the build up to that was my entire life. So, that's always worth considering too, is that sometimes your life might need more build up.
To be honest, I don't think you ever stop learning, developing, and building your life. I certainly haven't. I don't intend to stop doing that because I think that's when people become unhappy, when they do stagnate and they stop moving forward. Yeah.
My friend and I talked about that.
Oh, go ahead.
We sort of regarded it as the moment you stagnate is really the moment that you die. Like the moment that you stop moving forward in personal growth and in life and like trying to make the world better, that's the moment that you really die. It's not when your body fails and your heart stops. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Absolutely. Sorry, Walt, you were gonna cut in.
No, that's fine. I wanted to get that last bit from him. I wanted to get over to Sarah's comment because, and once again, it ties into what you guys are talking about, because you were talking about this lifetime process, which is a combination of what we do consciously and what we experience and I guess you could say think about subconsciously, or how our subconscious mind influences our lives. And that's what Sarah was talking about. She said she'd been reading the book The Power of Now, and she says the way I read the book, it was as if it was saying your subconscious is activated when you are not in the present moment, which is an interesting thing. She says, I find it's when the negative thoughts come out or the anxiety starts to take over, or I find if I shut my subconscious mind down, I can be in the present moment. But what do you think about that? Is the subconscious mind not participating in the present moment?
I think the subconscious mind is it functions in the same way of like gravity or the law of attraction, where it's sort of this like, it's sort of passive in that it never activates, at least as I've experienced it personally. It's sort of something that's always there. And I guess in regards to the activation thing, it's more like, are you syncing up with it or not? Rather than like, it's always there, but are you with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, good.
That's like, or like, are you aligned properly? You could even say it that way. Because like, if you're thinking negative thoughts and negative things are happening, well, that's the law of attraction. But if you change it to positive thoughts, then that's still a law of attraction, because things start getting better. That's how I've been experiencing it. But like the subconscious aspect, like that's sort of, I guess there might not be a definitive answer. It's hard to say. What do you guys think?
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think Sarah, is it Sarah? It was Sarah, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I think Sarah's right in a way, because if you think about it, when you're in, I'm going to bring myself to the present moment. This is what I do. The present moment. Now, my subconscious thoughts are not there right now. So, although saying that, yes, they are, but they are either running out stories of what might happen in the future, which is where either, if it's a positive thought, excitement feelings will come from. If it's a negative thought, I'll get anxiety or worry or whatever. But when I'm in the present moment, my conscious mind is separate from my subconscious, as it always is. But when we're not in the present moment and we're running on subconscious program, then the conscious mind isn't aware that it is separate from the subconscious, if that makes sense. So we'll just run with it. Whereas if I'm in the present moment like now, I'm just going to wait for a thought to come. So I just had one then thinking, I bet everyone thinks I'm a bit odd because I'm sat here not saying anything, asking about thoughts coming. But that's what just happened. But my conscious mind has allowed me to watch that thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. So yeah, I think Sarah's right in a way that the subconscious it's operating either past or future, because it's either projecting what people or things or whatever circumstances might be going to happen in the future, or you sat there thinking about what has happened and worrying about the past. So yeah, it's a difficult one to get your head around. But if you're in the present moment, your conscious mind is 100% in control of watching, and then you can change the thoughts that you're having and consciously make a decision to go in a different direction to a thought that would ordinarily cause you either pain or love or happiness, depending on what it is. Because you can actively change a happy thought to a negative one if you wish. Don't know why anyone would ever want to do that, but I do know. I used to do that in the past because my subconscious didn't like positive thoughts, because I was that used to being in a negative place because of previous events in my life. So if I started feeling happy, my subconscious would go, "No, we're not having any of this. Stop
Right.
it." And then I'd listen to it and go off down that road instead. So yeah, it's an odd thing to think about, but I think we're all right in a way.
Well, I think we are all right. Yeah, I think so. I'd like to bring in another thought here. Neville Goddard, who Cindy Chavez and I have been studying his stuff a lot. Neville had an interesting take on the conscious and subconscious mind. He said that really they're part of the same mind. They're all part of the conscious mind, but we describe it as two different pieces to make it easier to kind of differentiate between what am I consciously thinking about right now and what are these other thoughts that I normally don't associate as being conscious. But really, it's all conscious mind, which I think is a valid point. I take it a step further and I say to myself, I think the point of confusion is our subconscious mind can remind us of something that happened in the past, like you were alluding to, or it can point to something further down the line, something that has not yet arrived. But the key thing, I think, is that thought, whether it's a past thought or a future thought, we're experiencing it right now.
Yes.
It really doesn't matter whether it happened in the past or it's going to happen in the future. We're actually experiencing it right now. So I'm not sure exactly what Tolle was trying to say. To be perfectly honest, when I read Eckhart Tolle, it kind of made my head spin. But from my perspective, seriously, it really did. But from my perspective, I think the subconscious mind is the ultimate in the now, because that's the only time it ever gives us any information is in the now. It may be information about the past or about the future, but it's giving it to us right now. So no, I don't think the subconscious mind is in the past or the future. I think it's always in the now.
Yeah. And the beauty of that is that makes sense, because we can then pull the experience from the past that the subconscious mind is bringing to the now and take from it what we decide to take. So we can take the good stuff if we want to, or we can take the bad stuff.
Right.
So that makes sense, because yeah, the subconscious mind can be in the present moment thinking about past experiences or projecting those past experiences into the future, but we can choose the bits that we can take and learn from to then move forward in a positive way. There we go. I think that
right now. We're not making that choice
Yeah.
yesterday. We're not making it tomorrow. We're making it right now.
Making it right now. Yeah, so that does make sense, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll have to read some more Neville Goddard things. I like that.
Goddard. Well, you got to make sure you have what Cindy and I call your Neville Goddard decoder ring, because
Yeah.
Neville takes biblical scripture and uses it in ways that the church, whether the Archbishop of Canterbury or the Pope or some Baptist church out in the Midwest, I don't care which one, they're all going to say, "What are you talking about?" That's the way Neville takes the scripture. He just takes it off in a direction that they had never ever considered. So if you're going to read Neville, and you're going to do it unaided, make sure every time that he draws a parallel, you make a note of it
Yeah.
because there's so many of these little parallels. Like for instance, God is sometimes described as imagination, and sometimes it is consciousness. But God is never a being that's out there who's interacting with us. It's always us. So you have to make a little note. Okay, every time he says God, it actually means either consciousness or imagination. And Christ Jesus is the same kind of thing. I mean, he has all these little associations. You have to almost have a glossary. That's why we call it a decoder ring, just to keep track of how he's using words, because they're not the way we usually use them.
Which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
It's good though. It makes you think. It really makes you think. And if you can, it's handy to have somebody like Cindy around because she's studied Neville so well that there are times where my mind will boggle and I'll say, Cindy, just kind of unravel it for me. I have no idea what he just said.
I've missed those. Are they on the podcast then? You're on the podcast with Cindy
Yeah.
doing that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cindy and I are currently doing just Wednesday afternoons. We were doing it 3 days a week, but you can actually go to the website, LOAtoday.net, and you'll see categories for Neville and for each of the Neville books that we've discussed so far. Right now, we're working on what is actually his first book, which is Your Faith is Your Fortune. But I think this is our fifth book that we're discussing, and they're all fairly short books. None of them are really, really long. But yeah, they're quite in depth.
That's good. I'll have a watch of those. I'll listen to those definitely.
Yeah, take a listen.
Anyway, back to the. Have we got any more questions?
I don't see other questions, but I see one more comment or a couple more comments. Jeffrey was answering what Sarah said about the question about the subconscious mind. He pointed out you can't shut your subconscious down or you would die, or actually says you would croak.
Of course, yeah.
You have to slow down your conscious mind, let the subconscious take over and lead you to your higher self and inner being. And you know what? I would have believed that a year ago. I'm not so sure about that now. I understand what you're saying, Jeffrey, and I think there's a lot to it that's valid. But ever since I started doing mirror exercises, the mirror exercise is where you look in the mirror, right? And you're just telling yourself, I love you, you're wonderful, you're terrific, here are all the great things you're doing, you're praising yourself up, the wazoo and so forth. You do that for 30 days, and that little voice in the back of your head shuts up. It just goes away.
Yeah.
So if it's going away, according to what Jeffrey said, I should be dead by now, but I'm not.
Although, I understand where Jeffrey's coming from, because your subconscious mind makes you breathe, so you can't stop yourself breathing. So I think that's where he's coming from with you die if you switch your subconscious off. But yeah, from a thought point of view, yeah, I 100% believe that you can shut it off. You can definitely, because I've done it the same with the exercise that we discussed the other week. Those negative thoughts that used to plague me all the time, they're not there anymore. They're gone. That's been reprogrammed and changed and disappeared, which is similar to the mirror exercise that you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's huge. That's huge stuff when you get that kind of breakthrough like that. It's an entirely different way of living. That's what I've discovered.
It is.
Life just feels different.
It feels great, doesn't it?
It feels fabulous. Absolutely, yeah. Now Jeffrey also followed up. He says the Jeffrey, right? The conscious mind is what we use to analyze what we are experiencing now. But does it? I think he means the subconscious mind. Does it go away, or does it change to what you've reprogrammed it? Which is an interesting point.
Yeah. Well, we just discussed that, haven't we, with your mirror exercise. Mm-hmm. Doing that, you are reprogramming your subconscious mind. What was it saying before? Just out of interest. Before you started the exercise, when you were looking in the mirror and saying, I love you, and
it was basically telling me everything that I was doing wrong. It was replaying all my worst failures. It was convincing me that I was unlovable. It was convincing me that everything that I focused on was against me, and I might as well just roll over and die. That's basically what it was telling me.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, Drew, I think you were trying to cut in, weren't you? Sorry, apologies.
So I think that if you do something for 30 days, it becomes a habit. So for the first 30 days, the mirror exercises are a conscious effort. And then after that 30th day, it becomes a habit, and then it's ingrained in your subconscious. And that's where from then on, you don't have to put so much effort into doing it. And in fact, if you don't do it, it'll feel off, part of your subconscious at that point.
I think there's truth to that because I the first time around I did it for about 45, 50 days, something like that, and then I did stop. And it took me a while, but I actually noticed the difference after a few months and picked up again about a month and a half ago, and have been doing them ever since every day. And I'm glad that I do. And definitely, the day always starts off better just by doing those exercises. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's good to what you're saying. So let's see. I think we've run out of questions from the audience, and we only have a few minutes left. But let's see if we can get one more question. I mean, Steve, I haven't put you on the spot yet. Can you think of a question for us to address that maybe is like a common one or something that has come up in your experience? Like, okay, here's one that we need to kind of figure out.
Um, not off the top of my head.
Not off the top of your head.
I've gone blank.
You've gone blank.
I think.
All right. Well, let me see if I can come up with one last one here. Well, okay. This is actually one of my favorites to do toward the end of a podcast, and we're near the end, so let's do this. What's the big takeaway from what we've talked about today? What's the best point from what we've been talking about here that just kind of resonates with you and says, you know what, that's the thing I'm going to remember most of all?
I think the celebrating, so the subconscious reprogramming that we've been talking about. So, for example, you were doing the stuff in the mirror, and Drew's reframing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main thing for that, what you were doing every day in that mirror was celebrating how wonderful you were with those affirmations that you were saying to yourself. So that was a type of celebration. And then
Right.
obviously your subconscious is like that, so it's kept doing it, and it's become automatic now. So that little voice you were talking about in the back of your head's gone away. And Drew, exactly the same. He's done it, but he hasn't been celebrating, so he's going to start doing that. So it'll be interesting to see the difference next week if Drew takes that away and works, and practices the celebration for every small breakthrough that he has. So we'll see what happens next week. So that's the main one for me, celebrating. Make sure you celebrate every success you have, no matter how small it is.
So is he right, Drew? Is that your big takeaway?
Yeah, definitely that, and yeah, continuing. I think the kind of the combination of all three things we talked about, sort of aligning and being like, reframe and do things like the mirror exercises to help with that, and then celebrating definitely. Celebrating in whatever way you see fit. I like that a lot.
Funny thing about celebrating too is it's not like you have to make it a hard thing to do. It can be just whatever is the first thing that comes to your mind to celebrate. And by that I mean the first way that you can think of to celebrate. So whatever it is that you're celebrating, whatever the first thing is, if it means just jumping up and down, you jump up and down. If it means go tell somebody, then you go tell somebody. It's the first thing that comes to your mind, and then you just go with it and make it easy. Because the one thing you don't want to do is turn the celebration into drudgery. Like, oh, I forgot to celebrate. I got to do that celebration thing again. You don't want to go there.
That's it's not really celebrating then, is it? It defeats the object. But you're absolutely right. It needs to be spontaneous. I was going to swear then, but I won't.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Fantastic. I've done it. I've finished this piece of work or whatever it is. Right, I need to either, like you say, get up, have a little dance, run around, smile, ring somebody up and say, look, I've done this. I'm really pleased with myself, whatever it may be. But yeah, make it fun. Have fun with it. That's the main thing. It's got to be fun.
Yeah. And I'd add have a 30-day plan, because 30 days is how long it takes to form a habit. Definitely keep at it 30 days.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that 30-day cycle. Yeah, 30 days is a good cycle. I used to be doubtful of that 30-day cycle, to be honest, because I had never really been able to prove conclusively to myself that it does work. But the mirror exercise clinched it for me. That's where it showed me, yep, 30 days really is the magic number, because I got about 20 days into it before I even started to see a change. And then around day 30, that's when I noticed, oh, the voice is gone. It's quiet. It's so quiet. That's the way it was.
Where have you gone? Where have you gone?
Yeah, right. Come back. No, don't come back. Don't come back.
No. But it's a great feeling when you realise that's changed, isn't it? And it's gone away, and it's replaced with just I accept myself, and actually it's quite nice. It's a lovely thing. Yeah.
Certainly makes it
So
easier
well
to
done.
stay in the vortex at that point. That's for sure. So anyway, well,
That's,
we've used up our hour, but that's been great. And Drew, we're so glad you got over the fence and were able to participate. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Oh, it's always fun.
And Steve, I mean, you're now officially part of the team. What do you think? Is this going to work?
oh yeah, definitely. It's good. I enjoy it. Every time I come on here, it's great because we have some really awesome conversations. And to be honest, I learn something every time I'm on here as well, which is great because
See, now you
we
know
can
why
never
I do
stop
this
learning.
twice a day, 5 times a week, plus Sunday. I mean, because I love it. It's just you get all this great stuff every time. I'm sitting in the hot seat getting all this, So yeah, I
So
know exactly what you mean.
you booked me in for the 1 p.m. on Tuesdays as well now, I believe, haven't you?
1 p.m. London time. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So
Some of those might be in the car.
well,
Some of those might be in the car.
hey, Drew would
We'll
jump
work
in the
around
car
that.
today. Well, we live with these things. That's all there
Yeah,
is to it. Okay, guys, well, this has been great. We'll talk to you next time, and thanks to our live stream audience and our regular audience too, because we get so much fun doing it with you guys in mind and with your input too. Feel free to keep the cards and letters coming in. In the meantime, we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.